Chiefs mandatory minicamp is coming up tomorrow. Who steps up and who are going to be questionable to see on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. It's nice to see you. It's been a little bit, but I appreciate everybody keeping it together and holding it down. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Right now, you can make the most of it by getting your bonus by being a new user and getting $200 back in bonus bets for just winning a $5 bet. That's $200 back in bonus bets when you win a $5 bet at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can go over there and get started. We're going to get started a little bit before the Chiefs because they're about to kick off training camp. We're going to take you, not training camp, mini camp, and we're going to take you through that. He's Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. I'm a little rusty. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, as well as RGR Football. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell here on the Locked On Podcast Network. That's us every single day for you on your team, and then some here on YouTube where you can like, sub, and hit the bell. Hit us on Spotify, on Apple Music. Anywhere that you can get a podcast for free, you can get us 5 days a week. Plus, if you want that much more, you can get us at 816-357-8781, where we give you exclusive tidbits, breaking news, whatever we can do to give you that insight quicker. It's on the text line for our insiders and you locos, and we appreciate you all for being here with us. Now, minicamp's about to start off, and we have three major questions. A, what are still the big question marks that we don't have answers for? That's coming up later in the show. Who's taking strides on their road back towards the 2024 season and a run at a three-peat? And we're going to start very easily with who's stepping up right now as we get to the culmination of the offseason program, which is mandatory minicamp. And who could we see that we maybe haven't seen enough of? Travis Kelce, Chris Jones have been there sporadically, but it hasn't been like a concerted effort. So I expect both of them take a little bit step forward and really like put the polish on this offseason just before they go away for some well-deserved rest and hopefully a little bit less travel so that they can be ready for training camp.
Yeah, I don't think that Travis is going to be doing less travel, but that's a whole other topic and story. When you look at what this is going to mean, you know, the guy that sticks out to me is going to be Nico Remigio. He is getting a ton of reps. He looks fluid. He looks like he is in a much better place than he was last year. He looks a lot more solid. He obviously did some training in the offseason, and with his shoulder injury, he trained his lower body very hard. It looks a little bit stronger. So I think that that's going to be a good thing for this season. But he's definitely taking advantage of reps that he's getting right now because some other guys aren't out there.
And you're absolutely right. You got to take advantage when you have that opportunity. And one thing we haven't had the opportunity, Matt Derrick will be joining us tomorrow, and the media will be able to be there all 3 days. It is now open. And one thing that we're going to have to start counting is reps at the left tackle spot. That's probably the most intriguing battle for me right now. And I think it's not going to be answered here in the next few days, but we will get a very good clue as to where it is right now when it comes to training camp between Kingsley Suamataia, who is just drafted, as well as Wanya Morris, who was drafted last year and got some reps. It is a battle at this point, and we're hoping later in the summer we're going to see Joe Thuney back on the field, but so far we haven't. So that has meant that Wanya Morris has seen some reps inside at guard, which is something that I talked about early in the draft cycle, so that you, again, are trying to get your five best on the field. It could break down that way. That ends up with Suamataia winning, going straight into a starting left tackle role next to the guy that got some left tackle starts last year at guard. And that is going to be a very young, a very powerful left-hand side if that's the way that it works out. I'm kind of rooting for that right now. Where are you at?
I don't know that I'm rooting for it. I think that Joe Thuney, I'm going to be really curious to see if he's able to come back and practice in training camp. We'll talk more about that once we get more information. He hasn't been able to practice, like you said. So that would be intriguing to see Wanya Morris lined up to Suamataia. And then at that point, if that ends up being the case, then it becomes an even bigger question: who's the swing tackle? Because then you have a situation where both those guys could potentially be starting. Who's going to be your guy that would be the swing guy? Is it going to be a guy like Lucas Niang? Is it going to be a guy like Goddard Chu? Is it going to be a guy like the other one, Now I'm forgetting his
Ethan.
name. Ethan, thank you. Lots of different questions.
I got my
and
fingers
when you
crossed for
start,
the rookies.
yeah, when you start looking at what you would have there, I think that maybe, or is it a situation where Wanya Morris would kick out and go to tackle, and then you have a rookie step into his position? So lots of different ways the offensive line can go. Really, we're not going to see a ton other than just kind of where people will line up in snaps. That's about all we're going to see. We're not going to see people being able to work one-on-one in their, offensive lineman versus defensive lineman drills. That's not going to be till training camp. So still kind of a glorified walkthrough. But that's going to be interesting to see who gets what snaps where, and we will get more of that information this week.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward on the other side of the ball to the defensive line lineup to see who's rotating in at tackle. And we talked a little bit about Chris Jones getting back out there. Obviously, he is the headliner in that group. But you have the whole crew returning, what is for the most part, I think not much of a question, but I honestly need to see somebody step forward. Show me that the offseason has done something for you to go take a little bit more back. Is that going to be Mike Dana? Is that going to be Turk Warden? I don't know. But I want to see somebody take what is the lightest workout they're going to have that's resembled 75% or 80% speed and show us something in the next couple of days.
Well, can FAU step up and show something? I think that's a big question going into this season. He has an opportunity probably at the start of the season to play significant snaps and maybe force his way to where he would get significant snaps even in the second half of the season once Amenahue returns. Lots of different questions when it comes to the defensive line. You look at the defensive tackles. Where's Noddy at? I think he's been out. I think he had an injury he's been dealing with, so I don't think he's been practicing a ton. But how do the young guys look? You talked about Wharton. What about a guy like Fabian Lovett? I mean, he's a guy I know you really liked. What's he going to show? Is this going to be a scenario where you question, okay, can he be that guy that can step in and be a second, on the second team in that position?
Yeah, he's going to be a guy that shows length. And now what I want to see is that he's moved his get off up while it's been light. I need to see some progress, and that's something that we haven't seen a ton of yet. It's early. You're learning, you're thinking, right? Like this is where they start to shut down the thinking and try to step forward and get off on the ball, and that's really what I'm looking for from him in the next couple of days. But they're not the only ones that need to step forward. There's some injured players coming back, some guys that are pushing for new roles on this roster this season. Who's stepping up? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Summer means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Whether or not you want to go bet on the Royals versus the Yankees, which kicks off tomorrow night, or you want to go bet on the future NBA Finals games, there's still going to be a couple more of those to go, whether you want to bet on the Mavericks or the Celtics. Lots of different things you can bet on at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the NBA Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Is it going to be Bobby Witt Jr.? We'll see. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
We have a ton for you over on the Locked On Sports Today feed. It is 24/7. Whenever you're available, so is it. So if you're tired of CBS and ESPN and shouting, you can go get that here on the YouTube platform or over on Amazon Fire TV. Now, what I want to get into is guys that are either on the comeback trail or are seizing an opportunity and who's taking that step forward. I was really, really disappointed to see Brian Cook go down last year. It was kind of a freaky accident. I was there at that ball game, and it didn't look comfortable. He's very quiet about his injury all the rest of the season through the offseason, but yet a week ago, started seeing him get into 11s, started seeing him be in more of a full-time role. What I'm looking for now is to see him take that next step forward, be on the field with Justin Reed again for the 11s for the full go here at minicamp. If he can do that, then I feel like they are set to go at safety for the season, at least to begin it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that he'll be in there the entire time over the minicamp. I think that they may kind of ease him in and try to get him ready for training camp, which is still a month away. And crazy enough, it sounds like it could be starting around the middle of July. So it literally is just about a month away. It's going to be here before we know it. So it wouldn't shock me if they have him in there and he starts, but then he comes out and only maybe practices or goes with the 11s for half of it. Maybe they start off that way and maybe he gets a little bit more as the week goes on. I think that would be smart. Don't push him too far. If he's ready to go, let him play. Another guy is Najee Johnson. Najee Johnson sounds like he is going to be he's going to challenge for a starting role at corner. Last year, everything that we heard and everything we saw at training camp, he was getting ready to have a starting position on this team as a corner. He would have been the number 3 corner, I guess, if you want to put it that way, and would have been on the outside with McDuffie switching into the inside. But it looks like he could be another guy that's challenging this year to start again. He could potentially be challenging for the number 2 position at corner. And if he's able to step in and do that, that's a huge boon for this defense.
And if he were to accomplish that, especially given Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, we're talking of having the top 4 cornerbacks on this roster all be drafted or signed the same year, all at the same level, obviously different progressions. But I think that's something that makes you feel like the tide is still rising because, yes, Trey McDuffie's out front. But if everybody continues to get better and come up underneath him and be there to be the next guy in line if somebody gets hurt, to be the next guy in line if you got to go 4 deep, whatever it is, I like that concept and them functioning as a group.
The funny thing to me is that none of them know anything other than being a Super Bowl champion, and you can add Brian Cook into that room as well.
Yeah, that's a nice little note to be able to say at this point, right?
Yep.
There's plenty. And I think when you talk about guys stepping forward, the gap that we talked about with Joe Thuney, maybe it's Wanya Morrison, maybe it's Caliendo getting some reps over there. Maybe it's a rotation. You never quite know. But I think what was really unfortunate is related to injury. It's not the injury itself because I don't even know what you can call what happened to B.J. Thomas an injury. It is a clearly defined medical event that who knows what the future means for him right now. And so you have to set aside and separate your concern for him and your prognostications about what this team needs and what it does going forward. Do you have somebody that you think right now would be the guy to step into that role? I had B.J. Thompson squarely behind FAU, who would have been behind Charles Omenihu when healthy on my depth chart. Who do you have stepping in for B.J. Thompson in wake of this incident?
B.J. Thompson, I would have had Truman Jones step in for him. And, you know, there's a couple different guys that you could be having go in there. Truman Jones, Malik Herring. They're going to be fighting out throughout training camp. And that's going to be the big question is who's going to make that last spot for this Chiefs roster. And it's absolutely, you're right. I mean, you have to take the football out of it for B.J. Thompson. Is he going to be able to recover and eventually play football again? We hope so. But we don't want to speculate as to when that's going to be and whether or not that could possibly be this season or in the future. So for right now, I kept him off my roster prediction that I did yesterday. And I did put in Truman Jones. I think I said Cam Jones, so I apologize on that, getting all the Joneses confused. But I did mean Truman Jones. But again, like I said, it could be a guy like Malik Herring who's been here and they know what they have there. So it's just going to be a question of how does it shake out in training camp, and that's going to be another thing to watch is how does the defensive end rotation go when you start getting into mini camp? Who do they have going where? And who's playing at what position?
Hey, you're not the only one doing it, Mr. Thompson. I hope hope you can forgive me. B.J. Thomas is a country singer from like the 1970s, so excuse me. I have Truman Jones stepping into that role myself. I think Malik can play inside, so I kind of have him stacked a little bit more there with the question marks about Isaiah Buggs. I do think that Mike Pennell should start a little bit lighter on the season, I hope. Let Malik come in there, get some early games. Love it. Get some early games. Let Mike kind of take it easy is what I'm hoping because he looks like he's living it up. I don't know if you saw media day, but he's all in on the crown and everything else. Like he looks like he's ready to roll.
He's having fun. And, the other guy, and I had Farrell making the roster, which I'm guessing in your scenario wouldn't. I think that when you saw what he was able to do last year in the size, it's a question of whether or not if he can take a step forward this season, because last year just wasn't there. He wasn't able to step in until the playoffs and until late in the season. So now the question is can he show something during training camp? Is his size something that he's going to be able to use to his advantage to really stuff running backs and really make things hard on linemen trying to get to the linebackers? That's exactly what you're going to need from him. If he's able to do that, he has a good chance of making the roster. They did trade a pick for him, so they think that they can get it done, and they've got a fantastic defensive line coach. So it's going to be curious to see how that turns out this year.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think probably the question mark that I'm looking for the most is where's Chamar Connor lining up? From what I understand, he's getting a lot of nickel looks, and whether it's Najee Johnson fighting on the outside or fighting in the nickel, I want to know what we think Chamar Connor's role is going to be after these next couple of practices, because I think he is the eraser, the Swiss Army knife of the entire defensive secondary.
There are so many players, and I started looking at the DB group, trying to figure out who I think is going to make this roster. There are so many DBs; it's going to be tough. And you got guys that are stepping up. And in like a Kelvin Joseph, who hasn't looked good anywhere he's been, but it sounds like he's looking really good in OTAs. Obviously, it's OTAs. We'll see if that continues. But he could make a push for the roster. And you drafted a guy this year, so lots of questions when it gets to the corner room.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. What we're not looking forward to is trying to wait. I hate waiting for these answers, but we have questions. What are they, and where's KT and what's going on? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell here on YouTube, folks. And join me tomorrow when Matt Derrick is back on the show. Give us the insider look at what's going on at Mandatory Minicamp. I wanted to mention KT because I'm just a little bit perplexed with this situation. There's a lot of wide receiver talk this whole offseason, right? But one thing that we haven't heard of is because we haven't seen Kadarius Toney, a guy that the Chiefs will tell you at every turn, at every opportunity, that if the ball's in his hands, he's the most talented guy that has it on this roster. I'm not sure I believe that, but they certainly seem to. Yet we haven't been able to see him. He's a guy that I think needs reps. I think he needs to be with the guys. I think he needs to have comfort in that wide receiver room. And I am starting to have some concern if he isn't able to go these next 3 days, that is putting his ability to withstand the season, concentrate, and perform at risk.
I'd say it's a fair question, and I'm really curious to see what they do when he's available. If he steps in right now, if we talk about the wide receiver room, you have Rashee Rice, you have Hollywood Brown, you have Xavier Worthy. Those are your top three, more than likely. Obviously, Rice is going to be suspended. We'll see how that turns out. But then you get into Justin Watson's probably going to make this roster. You just brought back McCole Hardman. That would be 5. And then you're sitting here with a question about Kadarius Toney. That doesn't take into account a guy like Sky Moore or a guy like Justin Ross or Nico Remigio, who we've been talking about already. So those are all questions. But the whole reason I bring that up and the whole reason this becomes an issue is one of the ways right now, they may think that he is the best player with the ball in his hands. That may be accurate. That may be true. We'll see. But the bigger question is he going to be able to get on the field? Because right now he's definitely not in the top 3. At least the way it looks right now. And I don't know that he's in the top 4, which to me means that if he's going to make this roster, he's going to be doing it as a returner of some sort. And is he going to be the punt returner? I mean, that would be what you would think. I mean, Lewis Reese-Zammit is likely to be the lead kickoff returner, and you have another guy in Hardman who probably would be number 2, I would think. And in a scenario where you're going to be having 2 guys back there. So we'll see what happens. But there's lots of different questions as to what Toney's role is going to be on this roster, because I don't know that it's a starting wideout at this point.
I agree. And I got to tell you, if you're not mentally prepared to be on the field, you can't be on the field. I think we've seen that. I think we saw that with the drops last season, not just with him, but with everybody. It's about the mental preparation. And I don't know about you, but I get serious Albert Wilson vibes from Nico Remigio. So If you think that you're going to walk back in at training camp and just get your job back, I'm not sold. I hate to tell you.
Well, and that's possible, and we'll see what Reed Mejia is able to do. It's a question of, can he stay healthy when the pads come on and when he starts getting hit in preseason games? If he can, he's going to have a shot at this roster for sure. The big thing that doesn't make sense, and this goes back to Kadarius Toney, he's in a contract year. He's in a scenario where this is his contract year. What is he going to do with it? He has a chance. Like, you go back when he was drafted, everybody talked about the talent. Everybody talked about his ability and his agility and everything to be on the field and get wherever he wanted to go. He's shown that at times, but he hasn't shown it consistently. You're not going to get paid like a top wideout unless you can show that consistently. This is his chance, and at this point, he's missed. From what we've been told, it sounds like he's at least missed all 3 OTA weeks.
It's hard to overcome, especially right now, this week in mandatory minicamp. Maybe you can get right over the summer in that break, especially like you said, when we're looking right now at 5 weeks, maybe a little bit less than that after these 3 days are done to get ready for training camp. That's a tall order.
Well, the other part of it is can he stay healthy? I mean, obviously, the skill set has been there at times. He dealt with drops last year, and I get all that. But the bigger issue for him is, can he stay healthy? And can he get past the hamstring issues that have been causing him problems over the past couple of years? If he can't get past that, he's going to have a struggle to make this roster. And that doesn't even get us into the other guys that were on this roster last year at the wide receiver position in Justin Ross and Sky Moore. And, those guys are going to be in a situation where they're fighting for a roster spot too. So how is that going to play out? We're going to get a little bit of an idea as to where some of these guys are going to be. And I do think that you're going to see a little bit more tomorrow. I'll be curious to see, does Xavier Worthy practice, or is he still held out? If he's held out and Hollywood Brown is held out, then you're in a situation where you're running, Rashee Rice is obviously going to be there. So he's going to be a starting wide receiver. Who are the next two up going to be? Yep. Is Remigio one of those guys? Does Kadarius Toney step on the field, even though he hasn't been there for OTAs, and step in as a starting wide receiver in that scenario?
That's going to be very telling about who's next up. I hope that we see Xavier too. I know there's a lot of excitement around him, and I'm excited about to see what he can do in this offense. But it's been slow going. So to think that he can pop back in for mandatory minicamp, I'm not sure about that. I would like to see it.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to see it be a little bit sparingly. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'm not saying he's going to be there. He'll be there. The question is whether or not he's going to be actually practicing with the team. I don't know if he'll be out there or not. From everything the Chiefs have said, it sounds like they think it's a very minor issue. And Mahomes has even said when he did his media a couple weeks ago, if it was game time, he would be out there playing. I will say this is the time that if they have those types of injuries, you try to just let them get it out of their system and get ready for training camp, which is, like we've talked about, a little bit over a month away. So we'll see how that ends up. The other thing, when you start looking at questions in camp, and I know we've talked a ton about wide receivers, but my question is, who are they going to be keeping at running back? Because Pacheco has missed a little bit. Clyde, I don't think is practiced the entire time either. But then who's your third guy? Because I don't think you're going to be able to keep 5 running backs this year. Maybe I'm wrong. But right now, Reese Zammit seems to be on the team because of special teams. Is he going to be your third running back?
I think your third running back is a guy right now that can do multiple things, because you have to have some experience. And I don't know that they want to put Zammit in that position, especially if you have to use him on teams. I think you want to let him concentrate on that. So if it's not going to be Deneric Prince, and I'm not ruling that out, I think that's a camp battle waiting to happen. I think the best use of a roster spot is a guy that can do multiple things for you, playing special teams, running some lead blocking, and he's completely underrated as an actual ball carrier. I think Carson Steele can make a spot on the 53 for week 1.
And if you go watch Chiefs social media, he caught a one-handed pass from Patrick Mahomes, or sorry, behind the back pass from Patrick Mahomes, one-handed. So there's that too.
I mean, the guy's got skills. What do you want?
Yeah. I knew Ryan was going there, and you know, we'll see if Carson Steele is that guy. That's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't know. They've kept 4 running backs for the past couple of years, and I think that that's probably where they're going to be this year as well. So if it's Carson Steele, that makes sense. But I will say this, and this is kind of something that's really surprised me. I don't know that it's really a question as at least as of right now, but to me, I didn't think Reese Zammit stood a chance of making the final 53-man roster. Right now, it almost sounds like he's locked because they expect him to be their starter at kickoff return. Now, obviously, lots of things can change, but in a 3-week period to go from somebody that they just signed as you thought was going to be their international player to a guy that's probably going to be on the roster and potentially being a starter at kickoff return is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legit role. If you can make it, guys make rosters on special teams every single year. Yep. Why can't he be one of them? I think there's a lot to it. Who do you think makes it? And who do you think should be on the roster at running back? We'd love to know. What are your thoughts on Xavier Worthy? And do we see Kadarius Toney? Leave your questions, your comments down below here on YouTube. Hit us on Spotify reviews and on the Apple reviews. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell here on this channel because breaking news will be on here. Matt Derrick joins us tomorrow. We are getting ready for mandatory minicamp before we all get a little break before training camp and the run at the three-peat begins. So thank you for being with us today. Make sure that you're ready for this week. Going to be a lot of news coming. We appreciate you spending it with us. Thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.